You're now listening to the Engage the Rockies podcast, your go-to podcast for local and state issues concerning Colorado.
Hello, Rockies. This is Sarah Jane Maroney, your host for Engage the Rockies, your go-to podcast concerning local and state issues for Colorado. Welcome to the Week in Review for the third week of December 2024. First up, El Paso County has a new coroner. Basically, the current coroner presented his resignation in September after 6 years. And when an elected official, specifically the coroner, gives their resignation, it is the Board of County Commissioners that appoints the replacement. So congratulations are in order to Dr. Emily Russell Kinsley. She's a 12-year veteran of the El Paso County Coroner's Office, has a medical degree from Baylor, and is also a forensic pathologist. Evidently, there weren't a huge amount of applicants here for this office. Can't imagine why not, but the commissioners were pleased that they were following in the footsteps of the intent of the voters because she happens to be a Republican, as was the former coroner, and she's also a forensic pathologist as well, and that was quite important to them in terms of filling this position. So she's going to be leading the busiest coroner's office in the entire state with a staff of 30 people, and we provide services to 22 other counties, including El Paso. Quite exciting changes afoot there. Moving on a little further afield, Kevin Van Winkle has been appointed as Douglas County Commissioner, which might seem a little odd since he ran for that office. But here's what happened. One of the current commissioners resigned immediately, and he then is the commissioner-elect. However, because he's going to be taking the office immediately, he then needs to, normally it would be a vacancy committee, which there have been quite a lot of concerns from both sides of the aisle lately about this topic of vacancy committees and how those are filled. For example, there were two representatives, Representative Epps and Hernandez, both Democrats, that were primaried after they had been appointed to vacancy seats and then lost their primaries. So evidently the vacancy chair committee didn't seem to align with the will of the people. It's hard to say exactly that you could conclude that, but seems like it. So in this particular instance, it is Kevin Van Winkle will now be the Douglas County Commissioner. However, what happened was that the Dougco GOP declined to call the vacancy committee. And I'm sure what happened was behind closed doors, they talked with Governor Polis and said, look, he's the commissioner-elect anyway. Would you go ahead and appoint him? And I'm sure that was it is what happened. Governor Polis did appoint him, but it's probably how those kind of things work, in the sense that if he's going to serve a month and a half or whatever before he actually would take office, that seems quite logical. But it is interesting considering all the vacancy committee conversations and the changes that have taken place more recently. Also, in other news, Governor Polis and the 10 Colorado electors cast officially the state's votes for Kamala Harris because Colorado was taken by Kamala Harris in the presidential election. What was funny to me is that Governor Polis mentioned the National Popular Vote of Interstate Compact. Colorado joined this in 2019. The compact would eliminate the need for the Electoral College. However, it's only 17 states as well as the District of Columbia that have joined, and they need another 61 votes. So it's not just a number of states, it's the sum total of another 61 electoral votes needed for the compact to go into effect. But he mentioned this, which to me seems somewhat ironic in the fact that if that were the case and we didn't have an electoral college, then the popular vote, which went to Donald Trump, those electors would have been casting a vote for Donald Trump when the will of the people in Colorado was votes for Kamala Harris. So it's kind of an odd duck, that one. But nonetheless, they have declared that they will be casting their votes for Kamala Harris, as is correct and good according to the Electoral College. Moving a little bit further afield again here, another seemingly random article. This is from CBS News. The Colorado town of Superior voted to put themselves under home rule. And this is interesting. Basically, there was a clerical error, and the measure of whether the town should be under home rule or not should have been put on the November ballot, but it wasn't. So they had a special election. And the town has 13,000 people, but the votes were 1,670 votes for home rule and 721 against. So not a lot of people came out voting this, but obviously if you just voted, it might have been kind of confusing. But they supposedly put a lot of effort into trying to explain home rule and what that actually meant for their county. And there are also a couple of others: Boulder, Lafayette, Louisville, Erie, Arvada. I think I said Louisville like a Kentuckian. Oh my goodness. Louisville. I'm a Coloradan. However, I had recently been speaking to the city council clerk, the city clerk, Sarah Johnson, who's from Kentucky. Anyway, Louisville and Boulder, Lafayette, Erie, and Arvada all have home rule, and Broomfield as well. So, and that's probably something that we should be talking about here on our podcast and explaining a little bit more about what home rule is. Finally, here we go again with the wolves. We talked about this last week, but there have been some updates. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife have made improvements to the conflict minimization program. So basically, they're trying to do their best to help mitigate the situation. I would assume that this is all of the wolves killing cattle, and that the cattle ranchers are rather unhappy about this. Again, probably should get someone in to talk about this. We did have an episode where our guest mentioned ballot box biology and that's not a good way to do things. The bill in relation to hunting big cats was actually defeated off the ballot. And I think it probably relates to the fact that the wolf reintroduction did pass. And I've heard rumors that there could be another ballot measure to attempt to get rid of the wolf reintroduction. I would assume that doesn't mean we kill wolves. Maybe we send them back to Oregon. Not quite sure how that would work out. But yes, there are now quite a few different things. The state is launching the Colorado Range Rider Program, and it's to help specialized training and deploy to local communities where skilled riders who will work alongside Colorado's livestock producers to mitigate conflict, expand capacity on the range, and help support resilient ranchers. This is the Colorado Commission of Agriculture, Kate Greenberg, that said this. And grants of up to $20,000 are available to various organizations to try and help these efforts. Again, quite a controversial issue that didn't quite seem clear on the ballot. And those are your top stories for the third week of December 2025. Oops, see, I'm already there. 2024. Oh my goodness. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Engage the Rockies podcast, your go-to podcast for local and state issues concerning Colorado.